All right, here we are at another episode of Flipping Houses for Rookies. Good morning, Peter.
Morning, Bill. Morning, everyone. Or afternoon, or evening, or dead of night. Right?
We are episode number 368 of Flipping Houses for Rookies. And the title of today's episode is, Are you ignoring creative real estate normally, but don't want to? Here is the description. We've all been there. The attraction of creative real estate strategies beckons you and promises ways to maximize life and what did I do there? Oh my goodness. I'm going to start over again. We've all been there. The attraction of creative real estate strategies beckons you and promises ways to maximize income and promises, why am I having problems here? And define. I practiced this like five times this morning.
Make something up.
Yeah. So creative real estate strategies beckons you and promises ways to maximize income and redefine our lifestyle. Yet somehow we keep pushing it to the back burner, and often it's the lingering hesitation, the I'm just not in the mood feeling after dealing with life, leaving you convinced you'll get to it when you have time. But that time never seems to come. In this episode, we will explore the subtle barriers you are up against and holding you back from diving into the world of creative real estate results that land in your bank account, known as profits. Join us as we unravel the psychology that is probably working against you, that you usually don't know about yet. So, if you ever felt the pull of creative real estate, but found yourself hesitating or not in the mood to do it, this episode will help you untap and discover how you can possibly unstick it and actually get going and getting some checks.
Okay.
Oh, I fumbled through that now, didn't I? All right, let's do the housekeeping.
Yay!
Yeah, let's do the housekeeping. So there's a link inside the chat or inside of the description that will help you with this episode. It's actually a very unique link. I've never done it before, and it has nothing to do with me. I sent you to an ebook that I read and actually devised this podcast from. Make sure you subscribe to us or like us or dislike us and leave us a comment wherever you're listening. And if you have any questions, you can go to Facebook or YouTube on Thursday mornings at 9:30 a.m. and you can actually be part of the podcast. Or you can go to flippinghouses4rookies.com, and on the top right-hand side, there's a support ticket there, and you can send a question in, and I will get them. If it's for me or Peter, I'll make sure you get answered. Okay? So here we go, Peter. You ready?
Absolutely ready. Because I saw an email you wrote about this kind of mood topic, and I thought, damn, Bill's trying to tell me something politely through an email indirectly. But you said, like, no, it wasn't exactly me. But boy, do a lot of people identify it with, like, well, if you don't feel like something, you can have a thought in your head, I should do that. And you go, the emotion gets in the way. You need a good emotion, not a bad one, or you won't move. So,
I'm going to show you how to fix all that today.
Okay.
I've been practicing it for a month, and it is actually absolutely incredible.
Okie doke.
It's changed my life. Absolutely changed my life.
Lead the way.
And it's simple. Is your real estate career controlled by your weather pattern of emotions? In other words, your moods. Kind of like, today, I don't feel like doing blah, blah, blah. Or always looking for the perfect time and place, or mood to work on your real estate stuff. Maybe it's you're roaming around waiting for the mood to hit you to make things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Having seasons when you work for several days or weeks, then not work for several days or weeks on your real estate stuff. While all the time you know this isn't how it's supposed to be. And it weighs on you. It's like this emotional anchor because you know you should have done it. And you know you should. It's like going to the gym. I know I should have went to the gym this morning, but you didn't. And it weighs on you.
Oh, there's nothing worse than having nobody to blame but yourself. It's just
Right.
terrible. Worst.
And this mood swing stuff is a direct hit to your wallet or your bank account, and you know it. And as soon as you open your bank account or you think about money, you're like, I didn't do it. And you don't like this. All while also knowing that career creative real estate entrepreneurs do way better than you. Mainly because they seem to have much better discipline on doing their marketing and calling sellers. And you know it. And they're making deals. And you aren't.
How rude.
And you spend way too much time thinking about this.
Hey, you know what's the worst thing is? When some of those people making money know way, way less than you do.
Mm-hmm.
That's insult, injury, insult in the wound. Like, but that guy doesn't know anything about blah, blah, blah. Like, and he's still son of a.
Peter, what's going on over there? You're like squirming in your seat over there. Am I like hitting a little too close to home or what?
I am representing everybody else squirming at home. It's my job.
Is that your answer? You're going to stick to it?
I am the rookie representing the listener. So when I don't get it, they don't get it. So I ask questions and I squirm for them.
But some days are really hard and you're just not in the mood.
Mm-hmm.
Life beats you up and nothing happens. Until one morning you wake up and you have a burst of energy.
The sun is shining.
And you sacrifice your feelings. And you rearrange your life and your schedule. And you tell everybody, I'm doing my real estate. Leave me alone.
Close that door.
You have that resurgence and you're ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
You muster up the energy and make those real estate seller calls you know you should be making. And you plow through it, sometimes with blindfolds and a handgun. And you just work your way through the unforeseen. But nothing happens. No deal or hint of one. And after a while, you start to think, this isn't working. How am I doing so far, Peter?
I think you should write a movie. You paint lots of good pictures, Bill. Can you see what he's saying, folks? Can you identify?
So now you have a mood problem mixed with a failed purpose problem.
Well, now you got a good excuse, at least.
Much like flour, milk, oil, and eggs make a cake, here you are, smack dab in the middle of it, bad mood and failed purpose. As if like the whole world just crapped on you and you're in the middle of it.
Mm-hmm.
and you got nobody to talk to because your family doesn't believe that you should be doing this because you've been doing this for a year or two. I know people that have been doing this for decades.
Yeah.
And they talk about real estate and they buy things and they do this and they do that. And the only thing they don't do is call a seller or go in a house.
Mm.
Matter of fact, let me be even more harsh. The only thing they don't do is make an offer or enough offers. They do everything else. And then they want to know why they feel that way. Why the bad mood and why the failed purpose. And they end up with total loss as a real estate career.
Thanks, Bill. You've made us all feel good today.
I mean, how many times can you run into a burning building of real estate to rescue your career and get smoke annihilation, burn, or plain old just hurt? How many times can you do that? Some even try to try expensive coaching, right? And try to control this vicious cycle or this hamster wheel effect by having somebody hold them accountable.
Yeah.
So what do you do about this whole mood swing, lack of production thing? Today, I'm going to give you a couple of mental exercises to combat this whole mood controlling your wallet fiasco, can't read my own writing, and put you back in control. Would that be good?
Yeah. Mental exercises.
Mental exercises. And I'm not talking about mental masturbation like I normally talk about.
Dum-dum.
That means playing with yourself in your own mind. Sorry, ladies.
Or
12
12
minutes into the podcast, and I'm wondering, I think we'll be done in another 20 minutes.
Well, we can go practice your mental exercise. People put an hour aside. Maybe you need to give us 10 minutes at the end to go sit in the corner and practice whatever you're going to tell us. I hope they're not those affirmation things. I think those are silly.
No.
Sorry. If that's the best you got, Sorry.
So the first strategy I learned is from an ebook that Dan Sullivan, which I found this book by accident. Actually, I signed up for some of his coaching, and they gave me this book as part of the coaching program.
Oh.
And it was very expensive. But I found it by accident. It's actually on his website.
Oh.
And I had to go digging for it because it's not under his ebooks. It's like in this archives. So it's not something that I know most people have seen or heard about. It's not actually like a book. I went on Amazon. I couldn't find it on Amazon. I went on eBay. I went to a couple other sites that I used to buy books from. Couldn't find it anywhere. So Dan Sullivan is the owner or the head of Strategic Coach. And the name of the book is Thinking About Your Thinking.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's what we're going to talk about. So basically, most people's thinking is limited until you start to think about what you're thinking.
Yeah.
And when you start to observe your own mind and what it is thinking, a subtle mental shift creates massive change in perception and possibilities. these are Dan's words. I didn't write these. These are Dan Sullivan's words. It's part of the book. So I'm encouraging you to go get this ebook. I think it's $15 or $20. But I promise you, it is no pun intended, mind altering. It is amazing.
No, it makes sense what you're saying, because I'm pretty sure most of us just think whatever thinks on its own. We're not like thinking on purpose. Like thoughts just happen. You go meandering through your day and things show up. So we're not really controlling it very much. It's just doing its own thing, and that's not who's driving the boat here, you know.
Right.
So thinking about thinking, that's pretty intelligent, actually.
Yep. So when you start to observe your own mind and what it is thinking, subtle mental shifts creates massive change in perception and possibilities. So what's perception, Peter?
Well, it's experiencing or seeing the world through your various senses. You know, you see things, you feel things, you hear things.
Okay.
You know, things get into your space. I guess the most succinct way I could say is the outside world gets inside you some way. I know technically, scientifically, there's frequencies, there's wavelengths, there's all these fancy things, but you see things, you hear things, you smell things, you perceive one way or the other. What's going on around me?
Right.
Imagine not seeing, you know, being blind, deaf. That's tough when people have that. Either one, both. Eek.
So I have a very simple definition for perception.
Mm-hmm.
It's communication without words.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So basically what you're saying, it's through feeling, usually, like gravity is a perception.
Yep.
Right. So touch is a perception. You know, like you said, eyes, you know, sight and hearing, and taste is a perception. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So weight is a perception. Right.
Yeah.
So most people don't know this, but mental image pictures have weight. They have like mass. They can hold you down when you're depressed. That's mental image pictures like weighing you down.
They feel heavy. You feel heavy. They feel heavy.
Right.
Your weight hasn't changed, but you feel heavy. Yeah.
Most people don't know that. Right.
Yeah. And when you say communication, you're not talking about talking anything, but when something goes back and forth to you or other people, it's a communication of sorts. There's information, there's something going back and forth beyond words. So it counts as communication.
Well, think of it this way. If your perception is low, like you're in a bad mood, or you're depressed, or you have something on your mind, like the rent is due on Thursday and it's Tuesday and you have no idea how you're going to pay it, and like that's just consuming your life. The first thing that's going to happen is your perception is going to be all into that moment, right?
Yeah.
And it's going to thwart your perception. Now, here's what happens. When your perception gets thwarted, your observation goes down. Right? So I know for a fact, and I'm going to divert here for a second, when I'm coaching, right, I know for a fact that most of my coaching is about scarcity. Like I don't have the rent for Thursday and it's Tuesday.
Yeah.
So usually what happens is I'll go through a process of showing, and I don't coach people on having the rent on Thursday, but the point that I'm trying to make is that sorry, my text keeps going off and I keep getting distracted. I should shut it off actually. So what happens is I'll go through a process with that person to say, well, what's another way that you can get the rent, and what's another way you can get the rent? And usually, to me, scarcity means you're not thinking enough outside of the box or outside of your own head with alternatives or other ways that you could possibly do it. So to me, Scarcity is a lack of outflow. Like, I'll have a student that buys a house, right? And they're telling me they can't sell it.
Hmm.
When I dig in, I find out that they're advertising it in one place and only one place, and that's it. Right? Or the ad is not communicating very well and it's not capturing people's attention. So the scarcity is not enough outflow. See, when you're introverted, you introverted means you're inside your own head, right? You're not looking on the outside and you're not looking at the potential. So when you're introverted, which a bad mood will do that, it kind of kicks you inside yourself, right? When you're introverted, what happens is you're not outflowing. You don't feel like communicating. You don't feel like talking to anybody. You're just like, you just want to stay hidden, curled up in a ball underneath the bed, until the storm blows over, right? So there's no communication.
Yeah. You don't feel like reaching out.
Right. So here's the mental exercise. Here's what we're going to do. Ready? So at any given time, you say to yourself, what am I thinking about right now? It's simple, right? It's very simple. But you think, what am I thinking about right now? And very often for me, what happens, I'm like, why the hell am I thinking about that?
Yeah.
Right? And you'll discover for yourself how to step outside of the specifics of any situation, right? And take action in a positive way. And if you make this paramount habit, or make it a permanent habit, right, that you use every time you feel confused or restricted by a situation you're in, you'll notice changes. So if you're not getting something you want, you ask yourself, what am I thinking about right now?
I can imagine, from my guess, what I do when I think what other people do, but you'd be thinking about the problem.
Yeah.
And not about solutions. What you said a few minutes ago, we have a mutual friend for a few years back, and she would be with somebody and she said, well, what could you do about that? I goes, well, I don't know. Says, okay, well, what could you do? Like, I could, oh yeah. And she kept asking, and the person would come up with a number of things. They just weren't looking there, and they just weren't trying. Right. They were just looking at the problem. So that's a very helpful approach. Like, what can you do?
Right. Yeah, I'm not even talking about that. The approach that I'm talking about is, what am I thinking about right now?
Yeah, I just extrapolated because I'm thinking that, people will be looking at I've asked people, what are you thinking about? Like, oh, nothing. Well, come on, you got to be thinking something.
Right.
But they'd be thinking probably more about the problem instead of what to do about it, or whatever it is. It's somewhere in that ballpark.
So if you create this habit for yourself of asking yourself, what am I thinking about right now? It becomes automatic when you find yourself reacting emotionally to some combination of things, people's, or thoughts. I can tell you right now.
Yeah.
If you have a fixed idea, like my mother's like really on my ass, or my wife or my spouse is on my ass. If you start asking yourself, what am I thinking about right now? You're going to start to notice over a few days that there's a pattern of that's all you're thinking about. Once you extrapolate or take out of that thought what you're thinking about, you can now do something about it. You're like removing yourself from the problem, and now like you're a third party.
It's like moving out of it and seeing it instead of being stuck in it.
Right.
That's always good.
So asking yourself, what am I thinking about right now? it immediately puts you back into present time
Mm-hmm.
and letting you experience what is happening without the past painful unconscious mind interrupting your ability to think.
Hmm.
It sucks you right out of it by saying, what am I thinking now? It takes you right out of your unconscious mind, because your unconscious mind is what's doing all this.
Yeah, it's doing all the thinking for you. That's interesting. What am I thinking about now? That would have to pull you into now because that's what
Right.
you're doing into present time.
Right. And it takes you away from what you're in the middle of.
Mm.
You know, let me tell you why I did this when I read this book.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you exactly why I did this. This is a Bill Hawthorne moment. This is a personal moment. This has nothing to do with real estate.
Yeah.
So I write a lot, as you're aware.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I didn't know my life was going to turn out this way, but it has. So I'm obviously a copywriter. I write an email to my list every day. I write this podcast, which takes hours sometimes. I have several books I've written. I've written and published 6 or 8 books. They're not all mine. I did ghostwriting for a couple people, right, in other industries. 2 or 3 of them are mine, right? Um, I write for I write webinars. I mean, we do a webinar. Like I'm writing a webinar right now on the 26th of August, 2023. We have a big webinar. We'll have hundreds of people to that webinar. I write webinars. I
Mm-hmm.
write all the copy for all our pages, all the creative REI reply pages, my own flipping houses for rookie pages. I write scripts for videos, right? It's like what I do. So if you really look at it, my job in my business is I'm in charge of the new people.
Mm.
Finding, getting new people and having them do an introductory service to one of our products.
Mm-hmm.
That's like where I spend most of my time.
Sure.
Right. So I write a lot. So, and I'm not saying that to brag. I'm not saying any of this to brag, but just to illustrate a point. So I didn't realize this, and I'm a big Ben Settle fan. He's a underground copywriter, and he's an amazing guy. He's a strange guy, but he's an amazing guy. We actually did a podcast with him.
Mm.
And now there's another guy, Ian Stanley, who is a Ben Settle fan, and he's gone on and done well. So Sean and I have been kind of using some of his materials and doing some coaching with him and stuff like that, right? When I write, I have music on, usually the same music. I listen to the same music every day.
The same songs.
Yeah, it's a like a jazz, smooth jazz clip. I'll go on to YouTube and just pick something, and it plays 24 hours, but it's the same 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So often it's the same music.
Sure.
Okay, and it's done that way intentionally, right? I turn the music on, it drowns out my sound around me, and I start to write. Okay. The point that I'm trying to make is this. My phone will ring. It'll be somebody like you or one of my kids or my mom or a client I want to talk to. And my phone will ring because my phone's on my desk.
Mm-hmm.
And I stop writing.
Mm.
I have my conversation by phone or by text. And I go back to writing and I'm like, oh, shit. Where was I?
I thought you didn't do that. I thought you have your time blocked where you just shut things off and just focus on the one thing because that's distracting. That's your point.
There are times where I'll not bring my phone into my office. If I have a project or something I need to work on, I'll leave my phone in another room.
Yeah.
And I'll write. But the thing is that when I write, they say the good copywriters say you should only write for 33 minutes. and then edit and all that stuff. I go longer because when I decide, I mean, I'll write a 10,000 word book in one day, right? If I, and that's when I just like, I lock the door, I turn the music on, I usually don't even eat. I just get in the groove and I go. But the point that I'm trying to make here in this podcast is not to talk about me. It's more about when I get that interruption, what it does, how it affects me.
Right.
So I'm in some sort of a think tank or a mood while I'm writing, and then the phone rings and it completely snaps me out of it. Like snaps me right out of it.
Yeah, you got a flow going. You got a thought process. You're going somewhere. You're developing something, and then snap.
Right. So now reverse that. Like you're having a bad day or a bad mood.
Oh.
Right. And you're in that flow. You're like convincing yourself, see, I knew today was going to be bad.
Yeah. See, I was right.
I knew today was going to be a bad day. Or you'll even say to people, you'll spill your coffee and you're like, yeah, I'm just having a bad day. You're like in that flow. But when you say to yourself, what am I thinking about right now? It's like my phone ringing and it snaps you out of it. Just like with the example I just gave you. I'm writing and my phone rings and I go back to my writing and it's like, oh shit, where was I?
So you can interrupt something bad or good.
Right.
You know, usually you're talking about something good, but if you got something bad, snap out of it.
Right.
You just cut the like flowing of this bad stuff, just flowing and flowing, just like stop it.
Right.
Okay.
So by asking yourself, what am I thinking about now? It pulls you right out of that unwanted flow. Right. It immediately removes emotions of the situation. Your feelings change, and just like that, you're back in charge of the situation. You have to try it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like it doesn't cost you anything. Just this afternoon or whenever you get done listening to us, just try it once or twice, and you'll be like, oh my God.
Well, what you just said about your emotions will change. I'm sure somebody's thinking, well, if I got a problem, the problem's not going to go away. We're not talking about that. You can have feelings about a problem like apathetic or sad about it. You can get mad about it, like, damn it, I'm going to do something about it. So your mood can change. If you look at it, which is a communication, things start to shift and you'll get maybe a better mood about it, that you feel like doing something about it. Like, damn it, I got to go fix this thing. I've actually helped people with that. 45 minutes, complete change of emotion. So it can change. Has to if you're stuck. You got to get out of that can't mood until like, damn it, you're going to do something here. So that's a good way to start breaking that. Sounds good.
Right. So once you're out of it, it allows you to cleanly think about the situation now.
Yeah.
Right. And notice what's going on in and during the experience. Right. It moves you to another dimension where you can observe and evaluate more effectively. I stopped because I want that to sink in. Right? So it moves you to another dimension where you can observe and evaluate more effectively.
Yeah.
Right. So I started the podcast off with, let me find the words. Maybe not.
What, the stuff you're talking about, being in a mood and how to get out of it?
Basically, most people's thinking is limited until you start to think about what you're thinking. So that's why I was talking about the scarcity mentality. It's like you're limited. You're like in the problem. Like, oh my goodness, how am I going to blank? and it just keeps rolling around and rolling around. Now, here's a scary thought, Peter, and you know this because you and I have talked about this extensively.
Yeah.
If you say to yourself, where am I going to get the money to pay my rent on Thursday?
Mm-hmm.
Or you say, I don't have my rent for Thursday.
Yeah.
That's a decision.
You're creating a reality for yourself.
And what you're doing is you're actually creating no rent for Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're saying, I don't have the money for Thursday. I don't have the money for my rent. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
You're making a decision and making a problem for yourself
Mm-hmm.
subconsciously. And your subconscious mind works really good for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a loser. Why don't I have the rent?
Mm-hmm.
This happens to me every single month, and you just start. If my boss would have blah, 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 I'd have the rent. If my wife didn't blah, 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 if my husband didn't blah, 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 if I didn't just go on to that concert last week, I could have had the rent. Right? And you string together all the negative crap.
Yep.
So when you stop and say, what am I thinking about right now? It pops you out of that strain or that string or that path that you're on.
Well, you're on a pattern that's not going to get you anywhere.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
How am I doing so far, right?
Well, sure.
It's not
I'm
too
sure.
profound.
I'm sure nobody has been through this before, ever.
Yeah. See, when you're thinking subjectively or emotionally, like inside your head,
Mm-hmm.
that subject is inside your head,
Mm-hmm.
you're thinking about the what. You're thinking about the what. And this is a reactive state. What is the reason I don't have rent? But when you start thinking objectively, because that's what we're going to do, is when you say, what am I thinking right now? It begins to get you to think objectively.
Right. As if someone else was asking you the questions.
Right.
People do that. Like, hey, what are you thinking about? But what if you're alone? You got to help
Right.
yourself. There's not someone else pulling you out of it. So this is how you pull yourself out, it looks like.
Right. Another way to do this is when you're with somebody else is what's on your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's what coaches should do. What's on your mind?
Well, that's what people do as friends. What are you thinking about? Like, and they talk about it, and that we normally know to do that. Like, I better go talk to somebody.
Right.
What else are you going to do? Sit there stewing in it? But this is, if you're by yourself, it's something you can do. Everyone's at work. You're in the office by yourself. You got to do some real estate, and you're in the wrong mood.
So just to divert for a second, in coaching, if you're a coach, one of the things that you could do for your coaching clients is what's on your mind, and then it's going to be one of three things.
Wow. 3 things. Okay, go ahead.
It's going to be one of 3 things. It's either going to be the project, it's going to be people, or it's going to be the process.
Now, what's the difference between the project and the process?
So the project is the thing you're working on. Like I can't fix my bicycle.
Yeah.
The people would be, well, because my mom tells me I got to clean the kitchen instead of working on my bicycle.
Yeah.
The process is I'm working on my bicycle, but I don't know whether I should put the wheels on first or put the pedals on first.
Okay.
And then you say, what else?
Really? What else? Okay.
If you just did that, if you're a coach, if you just did that, you could not only help somebody really severe, right? I mean, this is good for creative real estate when you're on the phone with somebody. I'm not even suggesting this because it's when you're like, what's on your mind?
Yeah.
I do that very often with my sellers. Somebody will call me and I'm returning a call, and I almost always say, what's on your mind?
Well, that's a great question, because you have to start there. If you don't know what they're thinking and what they want, they'll tell you exactly the most important thing going on. It's a best place to start.
Right.
Better than you start yapping.
So when you're thinking objectively and analytically, you're thinking with how.
Mm.
And this is a proactive state.
Yeah.
Plus, when thinking about what you're thinking, all of your strengths are available to you.
Mm.
Right? Like confidence
Mm-hmm.
and strength in your abilities. Right? So Dan Sullivan and Benjamin, what's his last name? I don't remember his Hardy. Benjamin Hardy. Benjamin Hardy actually wrote the book for Dan Kennedy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not Dan Kennedy. Dan Sullivan.
Too many Dans.
Right? Yeah. Called Who Not How, right?
Yeah. I use that.
Yeah.
I use that daily. Like, who can help me with this? Hey, Mike, I need your help with the Excel spreadsheet. Hey, Mary, can you fix this part?
Right.
Yeah, I do. You know, who can help me with this? Phone
Instead
call.
of how.
Yeah.
Like if you didn't do that, you might end up on YouTube like trying to learn how to manipulate an Excel spreadsheet and spend 2 hours trying to figure it out when you can give it to your son and 10 minutes later it's fixed.
Yeah, and I go do something else that I'm good at. So it's like teamwork. You do this, you do that. So it's definitely who's a very smart thing to do.
Right.
Yep.
So it gets you untrapped and stuck every time. It frees you up to do what you want to do.
Mm.
Like you were just talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Truth be told, your past doesn't really matter. Your environment doesn't matter. And your finances don't matter. Only your decision and courage to carry them out is what matters.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I used to tell my kids all the time, when you're driving a car, you can't just look in the rearview mirror all the time, can you? No, you got to look out the windshield too, right?
Yeah.
See, unfortunately, most people, these are my observations now, most people don't think about the future in a positive way.
Mm.
Most people don't believe they can actually author their own story. Right? And I'm in the middle of reading it, but somebody called me out in an email because I quoted him. There's a book from Donald Miller called Hero on a Mission.
Mm-hmm.
And he's talking about writing your own story. Right? And he's saying that you play parts in your own story. Right? So let me because it's on my desk here. So so in stories, there are 4 primary characters. 1, the victim is the character who feels they have no way out.
Mm-hmm.
2, the villain is the character who makes others small.
Yeah.
3, the hero is the character who faces their challenges and transforms. And 4, the guide to the character who helps the hero. The guide who helps the hero.
That's interesting.
Right? So what my point is if you don't read or if you don't get other people's perspectives on how to do things, you don't have a guide. You can't be a hero in your own story because you're not getting enough information.
Yeah, I mean, it's an educational point that if you try to learn everything yourself, you die stupid because there's just too much to learn. So we take someone who spent a lifetime learning something, writes a book that you can read in a few days, and you'll learn a lot from that instead of taking years to never learn it, perhaps. So it's just a lot to learn from others.
Or to your point, hire a who, and they know, and you learn from them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. That's why creative REI reply has taken off. It's because we have become your who. We do all the work for you. You don't need to know how to get lists anymore. You don't need to know how to find motivated sellers. You don't need to know how to text anybody anymore. We do it all for you. Our AI does it for you. You don't need to know how to fill out documents anymore. We do it for you. You don't need to know how to sell a house. All you need to do is just get a phone number and put it on Zillow. We do the rest for you. All you need to do is just read the background report and make sure that they're not like some criminal. We do the paperwork for you. We do everything for you. Right?
It's crazy.
We're the who.
Hmm.
So we're completely diverted here. But the point is that I'm making is that most people don't think of the future. They're just thinking with the past. Right? So what I'm telling you
I think
is
they're stuck in the past. Is really to be
so
blunt about it.
so in my mind, which I found out at 59 years old, has made me unique, and I didn't even know this because people tell me either good or bad that I'm different.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the reasons why is because my past, like if I were to ride a bicycle and fall off a bike and break a leg,
Yeah.
my memory of a bicycle is not good.
Yep. Bike is
Right?
bad.
So how am I going to? So every time I think of that bike, if I did that when I was age 10 years old, and for the next 50 years, I thought bikes were bad, I never gave myself an opportunity to fix it. So
Right.
so what I'm saying is what makes me different is when I fall off the bike and I break a leg, I think to myself, what lesson did I learn from that?
Mm-hmm.
And it allows the painful experience to be a pleasurable moment now.
Mm-hmm.
And I get something out of it. So next thing I know, when I'm around bikes, I'm like, oh, I can't do this, but I can do that.
Yeah.
Right. So that's all my point is. I'm being very profound here, and I want to move on because I haven't even got to the part of the podcast that I really want to do.
Okay.
The second part. Okay.
Yeah,
So
okay.
so it gets you to untap and unstick yourself every day. It frees you up to do what you really want to do.
Mm-hmm.
When you say, what am I thinking about now? It pulls you out of all that fog. So you can see right. So truth be told, your past doesn't really matter. Your environment doesn't matter. And your finances don't matter. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is your decision and your courage to actually carry those out, those decisions out.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Because the future is free. The future is, if you author it correctly and write your own story, it will work. You have the ability, you have the power.
Yep.
Right? Okay, so before I end off, because we're getting there, we're going to end with this. Right? I did a podcast on this, and I don't feel like I've been duplicated. I don't feel like I did a good job of making sure you understand this.
Okay.
And I'm talking to you, Peter,
Oh.
because I know you have not done it.
Oh.
And if you did, you'd be telling me.
What's that?
And I'm going to tell you that right now. Right?
Oh.
So, and I don't mean that you're not duplicating. I mean, if you didn't do it, that means others didn't do it because it seems too simple. But I promise you, this has everything to do with what we're talking about today. And when you do this, and if you did these two things, you did what am I thinking about now, and you do what I'm just telling you now, the second mental exercise, you will change, right?
Okay.
So I want you to do this exercise with paper and pencil, not on a computer, not on your phone. Do it with paper and pencil, so it's two-dimensional, right? And I don't think you'll make it in creative real estate if you don't do this. Okay. So I talked about this in a past podcast, talked about your barriers.
Yeah.
Right. Now, what I talked about is you need to define and really work out your true and meaningful answers to these questions. Right. So the four questions are, number one, What are you willing to do or not do for a real estate deal? What are you willing to do or not do?
Mm.
Because now with today's podcast, you can look at them and say, what am I thinking right now?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a mood?
Mhm.
Is that a past experience? Like, I'm not willing to do rehabs because I did a rehab one time and it cost me $5,000. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So with today's, what am I thinking about now? If you put the two of them together, you'll start to notice why you're doing and not doing things, right?
Yep.
So what are you willing to do or not do for a real estate deal? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, what are you willing to do or not do once you get a deal or a real estate deal? What are you willing to do or not do once you get a real estate deal? Now, you may get a real estate deal and you may not want to be a wholesaler. You don't want to call a bunch of wholesalers, so you're not going to do that.
That's right.
Or like in my case, what am I going to do or what am I not going to do when I get a deal? I'm not going to do a rehab.
Mm-hmm.
It clarifies things for you.
Mm-hmm.
Once I read these 4, I'm going to give you the punchline, which you'll understand.
Okay.
Okay. Number 3, what are your expectations with real estate? And how will you meet them? Right? What are your expectations with real estate and how will you meet them? So
Mm-hmm.
if you have an expectation of buying 3 houses a month, how are you going to meet them? How are you going to do that with a 9-to-5 job?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or maybe you have an expectation to just get one deal. Okay, well, one deal is good, but by when? So if you get one deal in 3 years from now, you've hit your expectation.
Mm.
What are your expectations?
And it should have
How
a
do you meet
time factor, right?
Well, whatever. But what are your expectations? Because if your expectation is, I need to have, like right now, I'm looking for $20,000 because I want to do something. I want to do a personal thing, and I want
Mm-hmm.
$20,000. So, like, what am I willing to do or not do to get that 20 grand?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I could pay for that 20 grand from someplace I'm not supposed to pay for it. But no, I made a decision. I want 20 grand to just fall in my lap so I could pay for this. And it will happen because I think about it enough. I wonder where that 20 grand's going. I don't think about how is it going to happen. I think to myself, I wonder what's going to happen. I wonder what's going to happen in my life. I wonder where it's going to come from. It's not, is it going to come or not going to come? It's going to be like, I made the decision. I know it's coming. I just wonder where it's going to come from.
Right. But you're not just wondering that. You're also doing a lot of work. You work every day. You do things. You fix things. You debug things. You promote things. You market things. You're doing enough stuff, like habits that are routine, that it should pop. But to me, it's like hockey. You keep shooting at the net. One of them goes in eventually. And it's almost always an accident to me. My son used to play. But you're not just sitting at the middle line. The goalie.
Or I'm not doing something else. I'm not off with a job and have my attention on something else. That has a lot to do with it, is you put your attention on it, right? So number 3 is, what are your expectations with real estate and how will you meet them?
Yep.
Number 4, which is really important, and I'm going to explain why, because I don't think I did a good job with this on the podcast.
Okay.
What are your seller's expectations and how will you meet those? Now, let's talk about this for a half a minute here.
Now, I have a question. When you say sellers, is that each individual seller, apostrophe before the S, or sellers in general, apostrophe after the S?
It's a good question. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, like each guy.
If you're doing phone calls, right, and I hear a lot of this lately, if you're doing phone calls, and here's what I get from my coaching clients. Well, most of the people that I call, like almost all of them, say they want all cash.
Yeah.
So are you willing to meet those expectations?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm asking you, if I have a $200,000, if I have a $200,000 house and I call that seller and the seller says they want all cash, are you willing to meet those expectations?
Yes, because I actually know a couple ways you can do that.
But a year ago, we didn't think that way.
We were, yeah, I mean, and a few years before that, we were only looking for like terms deals based on some of the coaches we had. Then we said, like, well, wait a minute, people want cash. Is there a way to do that? If that's what they want, you know what it is? Every time we hit something, or you hit at me, or whatever, you hit something like, well, wait a minute, maybe we should do that. You know, it's like
So
diversifying your business.
So you're just solidifying this question. What are your seller's expectations and how will you meet them?
Yeah. That second half is important because like your first deals were only subject to because that's what you knew. Other people just wholesale because it looks easy, but that's awful limited, and you're not going to meet expectations with limited possibilities like that.
So I have done something with you covertly
I
that you don't know about, and actually, it's not even like a bad thing. It's not like I'm sneaking around your back, but I think what I've decided, and I realized this yesterday after I left your house and I dropped off marketing things, is I haven't done a slot deal in quite a while because I don't usually want to do slot deals. I don't want to make $5,000.
Right. But in today's market, it can be more than five.
So my point is that I've not done them because I haven't needed to. Why would I want to waste my time doing a $5,000 deal when my average deal is like 43 or 46,000?
Yep.
Right. But I realize we're not doing as many of those deals, so why not get 5 or 10 grand or 15 grand? And I know I want 20 grand, so I'll do a slot deal for that. I know you're looking to make some money right now, so it's like, why don't we do those deals?
Sure.
And here's the reason why we haven't been doing those deals, because we haven't been marketing for them.
That's right. It wasn't something we were willing or interested in doing, and number one above.
Right. So you see how this works, right?
Surely.
So if you don't set these boundaries, now pay attention to me, Peter. If you don't set these boundaries and purposes, you won't have freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't measure up these barriers and you don't know what these purposes are, you aren't going to have freedom. It's just the way it works.
You would think it'd be the opposite, that the boundaries would limit you. But if you don't know where you're going, I mean, if something's limitless, it's useless. If you can do anything, you'll do nothing. You have to pick and choose. And there's real freedom in making a decision and getting something done instead of wallowing in everythingness or nothing. You know, you got to pick something.
See, it's easy to gloss over something that may not be seen like it has too much to do with your future. Like I remember one time, somebody I was listening to, you know, they were talking about affirmations, which yeah, that's good, you know, and all that stuff is fine. But here's what I have noticed: there have been times where I decide I'm going to do something, and instead of having a counter thought like, "How the heck am I going to do that?" Because that's what most people do. It's like, I want to have $20,000 fall in my lap so I can go do this thing in January, February, March, and April.
Yep.
I want to take a 4-month sabbatical and go do some self-enhancement.
Yep.
Right. So I used to be like, I want to do that. How the heck am I going to pull that off? So it's like you have one idea working against the other idea.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just saying, I'm just going to do that. In fact, I went as far as my wife and I are in the middle of renting a place to live down there and committing myself to about $8,500 worth of rent of money I don't have.
Mm-hmm.
I could if I had to get it. I mean, I shouldn't save money. I could get it if I have it. I have it. I just don't want to take it out of my business.
Yep.
Right? I want it to just fall in my lap.
You want to make extra money, not sucked out of like already existing systems.
And I've talked about this in the past. You want to go buy a new car, then go buy a house. You want to buy a new swimming pool, then buy 3 houses.
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's what I'm doing, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
so the reason why I'm saying all this is because if you do the things we're talking about, like what am I thinking about right now, and you use these 4 tools that we're talking, you ask yourself these questions, and while you're asking yourself these questions, you think, what am I thinking about right now? And make sure that it's a clean thought. It's not
Mm-hmm.
some subconscious thing that's working
Or some
against you,
emotional reaction.
that's working against you, right? Anyways, going back to my story. So what would happen is I would make a decision, I'm going to do this. And then what I always found interesting in my life, which later on I figured it out, is I'd be like, you know what? I've been busting my ass. And I'll say to my wife, you know what? I'm tired. Let's go to Newport for the weekend. Go to the mansions.
Mm-hmm.
Let's unplug.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be in one of the mansions in the gift shop, and all of a sudden, boom, it hits me. Or I'll see something on a counter and it'll have a word on it. I'm like, son of a bitch. And it will trigger a thought. Or I'll be up there and I'll read a newspaper. And all of a sudden, bam, it just lands in my lap.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. But the point is if you're focused, you won't I'll see that little word or that figurine or that newspaper article in the gift shop, and if I'm not focused on my 4 barriers and what I'm trying to do, I'll gloss over that thing in the gift shop and not even know that it's there. It won't draw my attention because I haven't focused on the bullseye of what I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is way more than goal setting and affirmations. This is way deeper than that. Right? Way deeper than that.
Mm-hmm.
Every deal you make an offer on in real estate should bounce up against, first, money now, money monthly, money later, because that's the math. And then immediately after that, you should bounce it up against these 4 questions. What am I willing to do? What am I not willing to do to get the deal? What am I willing to do or not willing to do once I get the deal?
Mm-hmm.
What am I willing to do or not willing to do in real estate? Or what? I'm sorry. What are my expectations in real estate?
Yeah.
And what are the expectations of the seller? Every offer should be bounced up against these. So if you bounce it up against money now, money monthly, money later, and then you bounce it up against these 4 questions, it allows you to not overstep your values or anything you don't want to do and fall into a shady deal.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I call, you've not heard me say this yet because I actually think I should write a book with this title, How to Protect What You Don't Expect.
Well, that's good. That's good for the thinker brains and the fearful types and the rest of us after that.
How to protect what you don't expect. It's not hard to make a living or money. It's not hard. It really isn't. You can go down to McDonald's and get a job. You can sweep parking lots. You can cut grass. You can plow snow. You could wash windows. You could, oh my God, it's not hard to make a living. But what is really hard is to make the living and the money that you want on your terms. And have a life you authored. That's what's difficult for most. I hope I wasn't too profound today. I hope I helped you. I hope this is something that you can take away and actually practice and make some deals. Because if you dust the cobwebs off on what you're thinking, you're going to find out, oh, this is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So don't forget to check out Dan Sullivan's book. The link is in the description. It's not an affiliate link or anything like that. It's just I went and found it on his website, so you could go find it. I think you should download it and read it because it is absolutely phenomenal. Also, don't forget to subscribe to us wherever you're listening to us or watching us. Make sure you like us if you like us. And if you have any questions, you go to flippinghousesforrookies.com. By the way, there's a bunch of free stuff over there you could check out, as well as send us a support ticket. And if you're looking for our software that does all the automation, it's creativerei.reply.com. There's actually a webinar on there, and you go watch the webinar, and it explains how the software works, and it shows you all the automation stuff that we do that nobody else is doing.
Mm.
So go check it out. Okay?
One more thing.
Uh-huh.
This is for me.
Uh-huh.
Your homework this week
Oh, boy.
is to answer the 4 questions, because that's the only thing Bill hasn't asked us to do. He gives the, I wrote these down at least twice. Oh, I got the question. And I have used them. I'll tell you later.
Yep.
But I'm going to ask next week who's filled these out.
Good.
You got to fill it out.
Yeah.
You know, it won't work otherwise. So that's
Exactly.
my homework for you. And I'm the teacher, so that's your homework.
Perfect. All right, over and out. Flourish and prosper. And we will talk to you on episode number 369, which I don't have a title to yet, so I can't give it to you. So for us, that's next week. For you, it might be right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Have a good week. Over and out.